There is a line that Craig McCracken wrote on Instagram 2 days ago that stopped a lot of people cold. He said, "I grew up without a dad, so it was important to me that the girls had the best one I could give them." And that was Tom. Tom Kane died on May 18th, 2026. He was 64 years old. He was the voice of Professor Utonium, the voice of Yoda in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, voice of characters that lived inside the childhoods of millions of people who never knew his name. And in his actual life, off every microphone, off every screen, he was the father of 9 children. 6 of them welcomed through fostering and adoption. The man who voiced a fictional father for a show creator who didn't have one was also, in real life, exactly that kind of father for real children who needed one. That is not a coincidence worth rushing past. Kane was not a household name in the way that on-screen actors become household. That is the nature of voice acting. The face stays hidden. The work lives in the voice, in the specific quality of sound that becomes inseparable from a character, and the person behind it remains for most audiences invisible. If you grew up watching the Powerpuff Girls on Cartoon Network, if you heard Professor Utonium explain Chemical X, if you heard that warm, patient, slightly harried voice of a scientist dad raising 3 extraordinary daughters, you heard Tom Kane. If you watched Star Wars: The Clone Wars, if you heard Yoda's particular cadence, the inverted syntax, the quiet weight of ancient wisdom, you heard Tom Kane. He voiced characters across the Wild Thornberrys, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Archer, and the Call of Duty video game franchise. His credits span decades, and genres, and generations of content. The 2 roles that defined his legacy, Professor Utonium and Yoda, share something worth noticing. Both are father figures. Both are wise. Both are defined by their relationship to the young people they protect and guide. Both, it turns out, were voiced by a man who understood that role from the inside. In 2020, Tom Kane suffered a severe stroke. The stroke affected the speech center of his brain. For a voice actor, a person whose entire professional life exists in the instrument of their voice, that is not just a health crisis. It is the loss of the thing that defined decades of work. He retired from professional voice acting in 2021. Think about what that retirement actually. Not a choice to step back. Not a career pivot. The voice that had been Yoda, that had been Professor Utonium, that had narrated the Clone Wars, damaged in ways that ended the career. He lived with that for 5 years. And in those 5 years, according to the people who knew him, and the tributes that have poured in since his death, he remained who he had always been. E.G. Daily, who voiced Buttercup in the Powerpuff Girls, described a reunion just 2 months ago at the Lexington Comic and Toy Convention. The cast gathered, fans came, and Tom Kane, despite the physical limitations left by his stroke, was happy, engaged, signing autographs, present for the people who loved the characters he had given his voice to. 2 months later, he was gone. The fact that the reunion happened at all, that he was there, that they got that time, is something his castmates have noted with a specific, fragile gratitude. The tributes from the Powerpuff Girls cast are worth sitting with, because they reveal something about who Tom Kane actually was in the rooms where the work happened. Tara Strong voiced Bubbles. She has been in this industry for decades and has worked with hundreds of actors. She wrote of Kane, "They say there's no such thing as a perfect man. Those people never met Tom Kane. She called him the best dad, the best human." Catherine Cavadini voiced Blossom. She described him as one of the most genuine and kind people she had ever known. She said she would miss her dear professor most of all. That phrase, her dear professor, is not just a reference to the character. It is the language of someone who experienced something real from this person, who felt in the working relationship something that mirrored what the character represented. And then there is Craig McCracken's tribute. The show creator, the person who built the world these characters. He grew up without a father. When he created Professor Utonium, when he sat down to write the character who would be the warm, devoted, slightly overwhelmed father of 3 superhero daughters, he wanted to give the girls the best dad he could imagine, and he chose Tom Kane to be that voice. The fact that McCracken now describes that choice in terms of his own fatherless childhood, that the character was, in some sense, the father he was imagining rather than remembering, adds a dimension to the role that most viewers never knew was there. Tom Kane voiced a character that was created from longing, from the imagination of a man who knew what a great father could be because he had never had one. And by every account of everyone who worked with him, he was exactly that in real life, all around him. Here is the detail about Tom Kane's life that keeps stopping people when they read it. He and his wife Cindy were married for 44 years. They had 9 children. 6 of those children came to them through fostering and adoption. That number, 6 children welcomed through fostering and adoption, is not a footnote. It is a defining statement about who this person was and what he believed about family. And fostering and adoption, particularly at that scale, is not a casual decision. It is a sustained, ongoing commitment to children who needed a home, who needed exactly the thing that Craig McCracken was reaching for when he wrote Professor Utonium, a devoted, present, unconditional father. And Kane provided that repeatedly for real children in real circumstances. The voice actor who spent his career playing wise father figures and patient mentors went home from the studio and lived that. 44 years with Cindy, 9 children, home built on exactly the values that his most beloved characters embodied. That is not that is a life. There is something that happens when a voice actor dies that is different from other kinds of loss. Their voice does not disappear. Every episode of the Powerpuff Girls that has ever aired still exists. Every episode of the Clone Wars. Every frame where Professor Utonium explains something to Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup. Every moment where Yoda speaks with that particular weight and cadence, Tom Kane is in all of it, permanently. For the children, now adults, who grew up with those characters, his death lands the place. Not the grief of losing someone you knew personally, but the grief of losing the voice that was part of your childhood. The voice that was the sound of a certain kind of safety and warmth and home. And now, knowing what you know about who he actually was, knowing about Cindy, about the 9 children, about the 6 kids who came to him through fostering and adoption, about Craig McCracken writing the character out of his own fatherless longing, going back and watching those old episodes lands differently. The warmth in that voice was not just craft, it was character. And the character was real. Tom Kane retired from voice acting in 2021 after his stroke. His final professional work predates his death by 5 years. The characters he voiced continue in reruns and streaming libraries in the memories of everyone who grew up with them. What happens to those characters going forward, whether the Powerpuff Girls or Clone Wars material is revisited with new voice performances, or whether the existing recordings are treated as the definitive versions, is a question the industry will navigate over time. There is something worth saying about the recordings that already exist. They are complete. They are not unfinished. Tom Kane gave those characters everything they needed to live for generations. Professor Utonium is fully realized. Yoda, in the specific Clone Wars incarnation, is fully realized. The work is done, and it will outlast every person who worked on it. That is the particular immortality of voice acting. The face ages. The body fails. The voice, captured on tape, preserved in digital files, archived in the memories of everyone who heard it, stays exactly as it was. Kane died on May 18, 2026, surrounded by his family in Kansas City, Missouri. He was 64 years old. He left behind Cindy, his wife of 44 years, 9 children. 6 of them welcomed into his home when they needed one. He left behind Professor Utonium and Yoda and him and Mr. Harriman and 100 other voices that lived inside other people's childhood. He left behind Craig McCracken's tribute, the show creator who grew up without a father who wanted to give the Powerpuff Girls the best dad he could imagine, and who found him. He left behind Tara Strong's words, "Those people never met Tom Kane." And he left behind a reunion photo from 2 months ago, the cast together, Tom Kane present, happy, signing autographs despite everything his stroke had taken from him, still showing up, still the professor, still, by everyone's account, exactly who he had always been. There are people in this world who perform warmth, and there are people who just are it. Tom Kane was the second kind. Rest well, Professor.